Hi, this is Mrs. Gustafson, and these are the notes for Friday, September 21st. Today we're going to be talking about transformations, and specifically we're going to be talking about translations. If you reflect, rotate, or translate a figure, the new figure is called the image, and the old or the starting figure is the pre-image. So notice the keyword pre, that tells you that that happened first. So again, pre means that that happened first. A transformation is the action of moving the pre-image onto the image. So there's three types of transformations: a rotation, a reflection, and a translation. So we're going to learn about three different types of transformations, and then later on we're going to talk about combinations of these. So this would be considered a reflection, and it would be considered a reflection over the line X. You'll have to be specific about what you're reflecting over. This would be a rotation of about 30 degrees, so we would measure this angle here. And this would be a translation forward so many units. The other vocab word we're going to be looking at is a rigid motion, and that's a transformation that preserves distance and angle measure. So you want to think about congruence is preserved. And another way that some textbooks define this is an isometry. So if it's an isometry, distance and angle measure is preserved. Does the transformation appear to be a rigid motion? So remember, for it to be a rigid motion, angle measure and side length has to be preserved. So I want you to think about those. So number one, we go from black to blue, so this is pre-image to image. Is distance and angle measure preserved? Distance is not, angle measure is, so this would be a no because side length is not preserved. Number two, this is going to be a yes. Length and angle measure is preserved. It looks like it's going to be a translation and a reflection to get from black to green. And last, we have from black to blue, this would also be an isometry or a rigid motion because side length and angle measure are preserved. So in our book, the pre-image is always black and the new image is always blue. So here we have triangle JKQ, and then it is mapped onto triangle J prime, K prime, Q prime. So the pre-image was point A, then the image would be this little squiggle here, apostrophe would be read A prime. So this arrow again means mapped onto. So in the diagram, E, F, G, H is mapped onto E prime, F prime, G prime, and H prime. So we go from black to blue. What are the images of F and H? So F gets mapped onto F prime. F prime, angle F prime, and then angle H will be mapped onto angle H prime. And then what are the pairs of corresponding sides? So FE corresponds to F prime E prime. We would have FG to worry about, GH to worry about, and HE to worry about. So FG goes to F prime G prime. GH goes from G prime to H prime, and HE goes from H prime E prime. So that's the corresponding side. So this side turns into that side. This side turns into that side. So they correspond. We would also have corresponding angles where F and F prime would end up being the same. The second example, it says, in the diagram, triangle NID is mapped onto triangle SUP. So what are the missing images, or what are the images of angle I and point D? So if we go from black to green, I looks like it's going to be the biggest angle because it's opposite the longest side. So that's going to match up with U. So angle I maps onto angle U. And it looks like point D is going to map onto point P. So I'm just going to say P. What are the pairs of corresponding sides? So up here they kind of give us a clue. NI is going to match to SU. So NI corresponds to SU. ID is here and here, so that's going to be UP. And then I'll go first and last, ND maps onto SP. And again, my notation isn't going to be very pretty because I am using my pad, the Moby pad today, and it just doesn't write very well, so I do apologize. Then a translation. A translation is a transformation that moves a figure up or down or left or right. So here would be the notation. If we're going to translate triangle ABC, it's going to turn into triangle A prime, B prime, C prime. So from black into green. And sometimes I like to write those letters on my sheets of paper just to kind of show my work a little bit. So up in the blue, X is the left or right movement. So that's going to be positive right, negative is going to be to the left, and then Y is the up or down movement. Positive is up and negative is down. So because remember, this is the X-axis and this is the Y-axis. Each point of ABCD is translated 4 units to the right and 2 units down. So remember, we start with the black shape and we go to the green shape. So if I take a look, let me change colors here. So if I go from point D onto a D prime, I am going forward 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm sliding down 2. So I went forward 4 and down 2. So there's 2 types of notation that we can be looking at here. This first type is coordinate notation. So you always have a choice if you want to do coordinate notation or vector notation. I think a lot of the worksheets do show up in vector notation, so this is the word I'm saying, vector. So the point XY is mapped onto X plus 4, Y minus 2. So forward 4 and down 2. So again, your X is going to change by a positive 4 and your Y is going to change by a negative 2. And figure ABCD is going to turn into A prime, B prime, and C prime, B prime. So what are the vertices of the translation backwards 2, down 5? Because remember, this is the X value and this is the Y value, and we're going to be doing this translation to triangle PQR. So graph it. Let's figure out what our coordinates are first. Some of you might like to go from here to here, and some of you might like to just go right to the graph. I'm kind of more of a graph person, so I'm going to go back 2, so 1, 2, and then down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's going to be my R prime. And then I'm going to move my Q back 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then P is back 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we can go ahead and connect. And then you should always label your points. So this would be Q prime, and this is going to be P prime. The other option would be to go 2 minus 2 is 0, 1 minus 5 is a negative 4, 3 minus 2 is a 1, 3 minus 5 is a negative 2. And then over here we get negative 3 and a positive 2. So let's see. I'm sorry, that should be negative 2. So then if we double check our points, forward 0, down 4, forward 1, down 2, back 3, down 2, and it does double check. So on this case, we went from red down to green. So your homework for today is going to include the workbook, and here's what the workbook looks like. You're going to decide if it's a rigid motion or not. And remember, rigid motion means that it preserves side length and angle measure. So don't worry about the explanation, just give me a yes or a no on that. Then down here, make sure you do A and B. And then the graphing has graph paper for you. Make sure you notate your new picture, for example, number 7, A prime, B prime, and C prime. So this will be the first thing that we look over on Monday, so make sure this is completed. You are doing numbers 1 through 18. I hope this this will be too boring for you. Have a good weekend.